To Salam Media, and I still listening to News and Views with myself, Salalo Makwidire. The time is 8:36, and we'll be having a very, very highly anticipated interview. Joining us in a bit is the Executive Mayor of the City of Tshwane, Cilliers Brink. I think, as you may know, Mayor Brink is facing an imminent motion of no confidence tabled by the African National Congress, who are pushing for his removal due to alleged decline in service delivery and the Metro's finances during his tenure. However, the Democratic Alliance-led multi-party coalition in Tshwane, which Brink leads, holds a slight majority over the ANC coalition. And in this interview, we'll be delving into some of the reasons behind this motion of no confidence, the dynamics within the coalition, and Mayor Brink's response to various criticism. And we'll also be pressing, other issues such as, complaints from truck drivers about payments, service delivery challenges in townships, particularly when it comes to water. We know in places such as Hamskral, Soshangube, there's been, some really, really pressing challenges when it comes to the provision of water. And Cilliers Brink is joining us virtually. Good morning, Mayor Brink. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Welcome to Salam Media.
Good morning. Good morning. It's great to be with you.
I think first and foremost, the motion of no confidence. On what basis do you think this has been tabled against you? And do you believe there's a credible threat to your position?
So, it's an interesting question. As of yesterday, when the city had its programming committee to prepare for the council meeting on Thursday, there was no motion of no confidence that was tabled. But of course, there was a threat of a motion of no confidence, and that arose last week from an ANC press conference. And prior to that press conference, the regional secretary of the ANC in Tshwane, George Machila, had phoned one of my members of the mayoral committee, Jackie Ace, to complain about a new waste removal tender and the performance requirements that had been placed on contractors, in particular, that their vehicles not be older than 8 years, that they be fitted with tracking devices so that we can actually verify when the city has to pay invoices for work done. You can see those trucks were in Tshwane and not in Joburg or some other place. And of course, that each and every truck has to have credible and updated e-NATIS documents. So those requirements are essentially, from my perspective, designed to improve service delivery, especially in areas of the city that have complained about infrequent waste collection, dirty streets and open spaces and parks and so forth. But it would seem that Mr. Machila was very concerned about his own business interests, and this formed the basis of his threat of a motion of no confidence. Of course, the ANC has come up with all sorts of other excuses for bringing this motion, but the point of fact is that this is the first motion of no confidence. Of course, Tshwane has got service delivery issues, but this administration and this coalition government is working very hard to improve services, and that includes necessarily getting better value out of waste removal contractors and so forth. So that is what I believe to be the basis of the threat of a motion of no confidence. But just to emphasize that as of yesterday, no actual motion had yet been tabled.
I want to focus on this issue with the trucks. These waste management trucks. There's been complaints from some of the truck drivers themselves, some citing issues of not being paid on time, which has forced them to take loans for the servicing of trucks while they have done work for the city. What's your response to this?
So measures taken by the city under this new contract, and you must remember this is a new contract, so folks can't complain about non-payment yet. We haven't even reached the 30 days. But to deal with issues of complaints of non-payment, we have instituted these measures such as tracking devices so that when trucks come and they submit their invoices for work done, they have to submit the tracking report. It's a very simple, easy exercise. It shows clearly where the truck was operating, what work was done. And it's exactly these measures that will help ensure that contractors get paid on time, that there are no disputes about whether the work was done or not. But even that, there are channels for service providers of the city to channel their concerns. It is not a basis to be using political influence in order to remove the mayor. Imagine if that were to happen with water tankering contracts and grass cutting contracts. You know, you don't get favorable terms, or you got some dispute, and then you put a political hit out on the leadership of the city. That is what leads to the kind of chaos that has swamped many of our metros in the country, and which we must be determined to put our foot down and say, no, hitherto and no further.
And, you know, you've mentioned that this threat of no confidence isn't necessarily based on, tangible service delivery failures as cited by the African National Congress, but rather, ulterior motives. Is there any kind of tangible proof for the fact that you have some members of the legislature, particularly from the ANC, who have business interests when it comes to waste management trucks, their businesses, they get kickbacks from, all of these, trucks and businesses that work with the city?
So let me be clear. I'm not making a general allegation to say that, each and every ANC councillor has got an interest here. I'm sure that they don't. I'm mentioning a very specific person, the regional secretary of the ANC in Tshwane, George Machila. I had a radio debate with him yesterday. He denied that he's got interests in the waste removal service. However, what we have in Tshwane are instances where Mr. Machila, who's not a councillor, escalated issues of non-payment to the city. And of course, those issues were taken up. We're serious about paying contractors and so forth. But in these messages, he made clear that he's got subcontracting interests with a particular company. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the phone call to the MMC for finance. And my advice to her was go and make a statement to the police, because obviously it's a phone call. She's not in the business of recording her phone calls, but a statement to the police is a very strong contemporaneous note. And it puts law enforcement and anyone who investigates the matter in the position to look at other pieces of evidence. But I can tell you that we took the threat very, very seriously. And in our understanding, we're not an investigative authority. We are political leadership. We've got to tell the public what we know, what was told to us. And it was clear to us that there are business interests here of Mr. Machila. And I've said, Mr. Machila is not a councillor, and that's why there's no prohibition on him in particular doing business with the state. However, when he uses his political influence as regional secretary of the ANC to pressure the ANC caucus, councillors of the city, into removing a mayor because his business interests are unfavorably affected, that does cross the line. And I'm quite sure that that is illegal. It might even constitute outright corruption. And even if we don't escalate it to that level, surely it is absolutely unacceptable, that kind of conduct. If you want to bring a motion of no confidence, your first conversation should not be about the interests of service providers of the city. It should be about the residents. Now, let me tell you that, of course, service delivery is not perfect in the city of Tshwane. As with the rest of Gauteng, our population is growing at a faster rate than the economy. And this has been happening for the past 15 years. It places tremendous pressure on our infrastructure and our services. And the action plan then is to do everything possible to shore up the financial situation, to respond to the findings of the Auditor General, to get the best possible performance from staff and contractors, to be open about issues, challenges we face with communities, open in our communication. And in the case of water in particular, which you mentioned, of Rooiwal, in the past 20 years, that problem has escalated, but it has been this administration, this multi-party coalition government, that has finally decided to allocate the maximum possible budgetary amount to fixing Rooiwal, but also to form a partnership with national government, the Department of Water and Sanitation, to build a package plant so that the people of Hammanskraal can get clean water in their taps as opposed to water tankers as soon as possible. So in essence, what I'm saying, things aren't perfect, but we're doing everything in our power. And in fact, anyone who governs Tshwane, anyone who wants to be the government of Tshwane or the mayor of Tshwane will have to do the things that we are doing now. And those things are being recognized, whether it be by ratings agencies or the South African Local Government Association in Gauteng. It's very clear that we are doing what needs to be done. And aside from just complaining about poor service delivery, if you bring a motion of no confidence, you also have to show what you will do differently and how you will do better. And I think it's on that count that any threat by the ANC is a dismal failure.
How confident are you in the multi-party coalition that if this threat of a motion of no confidence does surface and becomes a reality, that they'll vote in your favor?
Well, I've been in politics long enough not to take anything for granted. And it is important to note that although our multi-party coalition does have a majority, it's quite a slim majority. Now, add to that this specter of potentially dirty money floating around. We've seen in instances where people have been bribed to vote in a particular way in this country. We do take the threat of a motion of no confidence, any threat of a motion of no confidence, very seriously. And that's why we've been so very candid and upfront with our communication. However, I can tell you that the multi-party coalition, the party leaders have met, and we've had a commitment from each and every party leader that they will oppose and their parties will oppose this motion of no confidence. And so I'm quite sure that we will be able to beat back this threat. But also, what I'm even more sure about is that there's no plan on the other side to form a government with an adequate majority to make the decisions needed to govern the city.
Just lastly, before I let you go, there's been around 635 million in unspent capital grants, which was later withdrawn from the city by national government. Why wasn't this money spent? There's so many projects in the city of Tshwane that I'm pretty sure, needed that kind of investment. There's all kinds of infrastructure collapse, but then you still had money that was unspent, and that went back to national. What's your response to this? Why is money not being spent?
So let's just be clear. All municipalities in this country, I think probably with the exception of a number in the Western Cape, forfeited money due to slow spending. And this was, I think, because of the pressure on national government, the fiscal constraints that they face. And so if you don't commit or spend the lion's share of your capital budget and your grants and subsidies by the half year, which is December for municipalities, then you are at risk of forfeiting money. Tshwane, if you compare us to Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, forfeited relatively little. However, it is a serious issue, and we are determined to increase our rate of spending. But the second thing is very important, and that is we can't just have spending targets. We have to make absolutely sure that there is value for the money that we spend. You can spend 100% of your budget, but then sit with uncompleted roads, uncompleted bridges, poor workmanship in fixing substations and wastewater treatment plants and so forth. And that's even worse than non-spending, because at least if you don't spend, you forfeit the money, it goes back to the South African taxpayers. If you waste money, you don't procure anything from it. Nobody benefits from that money. But we do want to attain the Cape Town standard, and that is simply that by the half year, by December, you have committed the vast majority of your capital spending. And I can tell you that at the end of the last financial year, which ended on the last day of June, the city of Tshwane had spent 92% of our capital budget. So despite earlier concerns about non-spending, there was a significant catch-up, but obviously we can do better.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Executive Mayor of the City of Tshwane, Cilliers Brink, thank you so much for giving us your time. Really appreciate it. There you have it there. Cilliers Brink Executive Mayor of the City of Tshwane is saying, well, that motion of no confidence didn't surface yesterday when they were planning the council's itinerary. It's going to be really interesting times, but I'm pretty sure the ANC does have something planned, because there seems to be a really big disdain when it comes to the Democratic Alliance and the ANC in Pretoria, or Tshwane, if you will. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be speaking to the leader of Al Tshwane, Hendricks, and we're still sticking with the theme of metros. We'll be talking about Johannesburg Mayor Kabelo Kwamanda, and well, ANC and Al Tshwane relations seem to be going sour in that regard. The allegations that Kabelo Kwamanda might resign by August, and this all comes at the back of Action SA and Herman Mashaba saying, well, for them to work with the ANC, the executive mayor of Johannesburg, Kabelo Kwamanda, needs to step down. So we'll be getting more insight on that with Al Tshwane leader and Deputy Minister of Social Development, Hendricks, right after this.